Bright light.
Hi, we're here with Anita Moncrief, who was the whistleblower that I guess brought down Acorn for to put all of the exciting things into one sentence there. Actually, one of our editorial staff, Helen Cohen, was so excited about interviewing you, and she came down sick this morning. So I am trying to fill Helen's shoes as a replacement here, but I know that she had done a lot of research on this and was just fascinated by your story and by your background. And one thing I think that she thought was important for everyone who's watching is, to first ask you, again, specifically what illegal activity was going on, because, the story gets convoluted and people get confused. So what exactly was going on at that time that was illegal?
Well, when I was working at Acorn, they were not only doing fraudulent voter registration drives across the country, they were flooding the offices with thousands of bad cards at the very last minute. And what that did was, in some cases, especially in Pennsylvania, it shut down the election office. So good registration cards weren't going through. The people were trying their best, but then in the end, they just let them all go through. So there was fraudulent people got onto the rolls. And then not only were they doing that, but they were working with the campaigns, especially the Obama campaign. And that's where I came forward in 2008. I tried to expose the illicit coordination between the Project Vote and the Obama campaign. They gave us the donor list, and they told us to target the maxed out presidential donors in violation of FEC rules. And they did that because they knew, and their funders knew, that if they gave the Acorn, it was just like giving to Obama. And Obama's people were behind this 100%. He lied in the last presidential debate when he said he had no other relationship with Acorn besides the lawsuit he helped them with.
And so the tipping point for you was the 2008 campaign. That was what made you finally throw up your hands and say, I have had enough.
Exactly. If your team is winning and your team is cheating, is it really a win? We're creating a world that our kids can't even live in. And so I decided to expose Acorn because I still thought Obama was a good guy. I was an idealistic liberal. But along the way, I realized that Obama was entrenched in all of that corruption. And to really get in there, I had to expose everything. And that meant talking about Acorn, Obama, the Democrats. Half of the Congress should probably be in jail right now for some of the things they've done working with these unions and other liberal groups in order to stay in office. And so I said no more corruption, and I became an ex-liberal, and along the way I found conservatism.
Now, was it true that you went to the New York Times and they decided to not go with the story at all? And if that's true, also, what kind of other resistance did you meet? I mean, it's dangerous to have to go out and expose these people. Kind of explain that process for us then, like what you were up against and kind of what you had to suffer because of that.
Well, as a liberal, I always thought that the New York Times was the paper of record, the gray lady. So when I went to them in July of 2008, I had enough evidence for a ton of stories on Acorn, an expose that could have led to investigations. The reporters saw this, and I thought she was going for her Pulitzer Prize, but along the way, her editors kept stopping her. So eventually, after stringing me along for months, 2 weeks before the election, they tell me that it is not their policy to print a game changer for either side that close to the election.
That's like the backbone of news, or game-changing story.
And keep in mind that they ran a story on John McCain with an anonymous source saying he had an affair, and I was willing to come forward and be identified and put a face behind the accusations, not just someone whispering in the ear in the shadows,
Exactly. Now, going forward, I know that in this, again, Helen, did so much research looking at your website, and she said that you said there are still things like this going on, even though Acorn was, sort of defunded and everything like that. So, I mean, what has changed, if anything, going forward, and are these types of activities still going on to your knowledge, and what needs to be done about those?
Well, one thing you have to realize, these liberal groups are like roaches or bugs. You turn on the light and they scatter. So what they've done is they've gone underground. They could not stand the scrutiny that came with the name Acorn. So these new organizations are forming right now with new names, with the same people, and they're out there doing the voter registration drives, trying to stop valid voter ID bills from passing through state houses across the country, and they're forming a network for 2012. So if you think the shenanigans were bad to get Obama in, they want to keep him there. So they're going to do everything in their power. So we need to look out for the groups that are organizing in the communities, look out for the groups that are doing voter registration drives, and go visit those old Acorn offices. I bet they're still there. They just got a different sign up front.
New paint job.
Exactly.
I mean, honestly, how many people would you say who work at Acorn are kind of oblivious to what's really going on, or kind of, is it possible to be innocent and working for Acorn in this, or is the evidence just so obvious within that organization that
When you first get there, it is possible to be innocent and idealistic and not know what's going on. Anytime you're there for after a year, you have to know. That's why when a lot of these former board members come forward and say they had no idea, I'm like, how could you not have any idea? Because I, as a development associate who didn't have fiscal responsibility, knew what was going on. They call them true believers. And once you become a true believer, you'll do whatever it takes to help the movement. Or in their case, you know, if we have to look the other way with a little corruption, that's okay. That's what you saw in those Acorn videos. Those were people that had been there so long that they got acclimated to corruption and didn't even bat an eye to it.
Well, thank you so much for your honesty and your bravery, and I wish Helen could have been here, but I appreciate you making time for us today. Thank you.
And thanks for having me.
Thanks.